Hi guys, my goodness, who put Grant Shapps in charge of the MOD? Oh yes, it was the same guy who recently made Jonathan Gules and before him Lee Anderson deputy chairman of the Conservative Party. So the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps, was giving evidence to a committee where he dismissed the lack of funding, staffing levels and frankly decrepit state the UK forces find themselves in, which are not my words but a damning indictment made by former top brass. Well, Shapps said none of this matters because NATO. Have a listen to this.
I just wanted to make one small point, only because with 6 former MOD ministers and lots of professional expertise here, this is taken as a given within this room. But for people watching and hearing that the UK isn't ready for war exclusively with Russia, it's important to understand that because we're in NATO and Article 5 exists, that we would never be in that situation. And in fact, if we were in a war against Russia, NATO has 4 times as many tanks, 3 times as many subs, 4 times as many helicopters, 6 times as many armoured vehicles, 4.5 times as many warships, 8 times as many transport aircraft, 4 times as many artillery and fires, 16 times the aircraft carriers, and 3 times as many fighters. In other words, we would be in a very strong position.
My goodness, does he not understand what being a member of NATO means? Like, I thought that Jonathan Gules was the scraping off the bottom of the barrel, but Grant Shapps has to be added to that list as well. Does he not understand that you can't say, well, we'll just rely on NATO? You actually have to be part of that. You have to Jesus Christ, just imagine for a moment if every country in NATO said, well, we're actually going to allow our armed forces to be run into the ground, but don't worry, we can just rely on NATO. But if every member of NATO did that, there wouldn't be a NATO. There wouldn't be all these things that he's listed off. Does he understand that? I can imagine the expertise that he was talking about is embarrassed listening to this. So, yeah, we can just allow our forces to be run into the ground. We don't actually have to have enough staff. We don't have to have enough soldiers because NATO. It's like, yes, but you actually are part of NATO. If NATO is weakened by you, NATO is weakened as a whole. And if members of NATO see you not pulling your weight, then they're going to decide, well, maybe you shouldn't be part of NATO. And then what is your excuse? I don't see that happening because the UK is so important to NATO. But his argument is basically, well, we don't actually have to do any heavy lifting. We don't actually have to do anything because somebody else will do it. Grant Shapps should be nowhere near. Does Grant Shapps actually think about what's going to come out of his mouth before it comes out of his mouth? Does he actually sit there thinking, wow, I made a really interesting point. I made a really intelligent point. I can imagine, we don't see their faces, but I can imagine the embarrassment of the people on the other side of the room there, the experts that he's referring to, the former ministers in the MOD. They're like, what the hell are you talking about? We can't run down our armed forces and then just rely on NATO. That's not being a member of NATO. Are there members who are weaker than others? Of course there are. But you can't have a founding member deciding, well, we're actually not going to do anything. We're just going to sit back and allow somebody else to do the heavy lifting. It's absolutely ridiculous. But then this is the Tory government. This is the Tory party. Offload responsibility onto somebody else. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.